Welcome back to my Mental Health and Crime channel. My name is Huda London. This is for entertainment purpose only. This is the case of the Idaho quadruple murders. One of the officers, detectives who were involved in Brian Christopher Coburger, his investigation and arrest is under internal investigation by the Internal Affairs. So that's a Brady Giglo material. And that can lead to a mistrial for Brian Christopher Coburger. In some cases it does.
Investigation is now underway for an officer involved in the case of accused murderer Brian Coburger, and according to experts, that could mean good news for Coburger's defense. Coburger was arrested late last year for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students who were stabbed to death in their off-campus home. He's now being held in the Latah County Jail in Idaho, awaiting his preliminary hearing. In newly released court documents filed on Monday, Idaho prosecutors have, quote, become aware of potential Brady Giglio material related to one of the officers involved in the above referenced case. The material, in the form of confidential internal affairs investigation, is hereby submitted in camera to the court. What all that means is prosecutors are required by law to turn any information over to the defense that could exonerate the defendant, help their case, or impeach the credibility of a witness. As Law and Crime Network host Jesse Weber explained on Dan Abrams Live, this could mean several things. An officer involved in the investigation could have lied or withheld evidence, meaning it could get thrown out. On a lesser scale, the officer may have had a pattern of misconduct in the past, but prosecutors have to disclose that information to the defense ahead of an eventual cross-examination. Right now, the case is under seal, so we don't have exact details about what happened. The prosecution has also asked the judge to issue a protective order on that information, which would then block the defense from releasing the information publicly.
It alleges that the defendant, Brian C. Coburger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder.
Meanwhile, some reports say Coburger is closely following his case from behind bars, watching himself on TV. But Law and Crime Network host and public defender Brian Buckmeyer says that's not unusual.
I think it's very normal for someone to follow their case if it's highly publicized. They want to see what everyone's talking about, what they're saying about their personal life as well as about the case. It's like checking Instagram or your Facebook to see what people are tagging you in or saying about you.
Other reports say Coburger is being held in maximum security away from all other Latah County Jail inmates. According to News Nation, Coburger has lost a significant amount of weight while behind bars, though he does have access to a TV and 1 hour of outside time per day. Some reports also say Coburger has private prayer services with a religious leader.
It is unsurprising for someone to find religion while in prison or in jail. Just like I would say it's unsurprising for someone to find religion when they're diagnosed with cancer or with a severe disease. It's, I think, the person seeing their own mortality and the difficulty of their situation and looking for an answer.
News Nation also reports Coburger's 2 sisters, Amanda and Melissa, were both fired from their jobs after his arrest. The network reports Melissa worked as a mental health therapist and Amanda was a working actress. None of the family have visited Coburger in Idaho since his arrest, but News Nation also reports they speak via phone. Coburger is due back in court on June 26th for a preliminary hearing that's expected to last multiple days. According to Idaho,
I think it's so wrong that both these sisters lost their jobs, their reputation. I don't understand that is Brian's sisters, but they don't deserve that treatment. They have to work for their living, and one's a mental health counselor just like me. So it's heartbreaking. She got a degree and earned a degree, and she was working. What if Brian Christopher Coburger is actually innocent? What if? It's just so sad. But it's more sadder and heartbreaking for the victims and their families. Acknowledge that. It's a really sad case.
Tonight, we're learning more details about the grisly murders in Idaho. Police believe Brian Coburger stabbed the students to death between 4 and 4:25 that morning. But after earlier reports, the victims were likely sleeping. New court records show at least one victim, Xana Kernodle, was likely awake, getting a DoorDash delivery at 4 a.m. and minutes later was on TikTok. One of the surviving roommates hearing cries from Xana's room, then opening her own door to see that masked man coming toward her, so close she could see his bushy eyebrows before he walked past her and out the sliding glass door. Up until the release of this affidavit, police had not revealed one of the two roommates who survived was actually awake and witnessed the intruder.
Releasing that information could potentially do two things: put them in jeopardy and also maybe complicate your ability to identify him. He might start getting rid of things, evidence that you might at some point be able to seize.
Police say last fall, Coburger, a graduate student in criminology, applied for an internship with local police in nearby Pullman, Washington. Around the same time, investigators say cell phone data shows he made at least a dozen late night or early morning trips near the victim's home. Kaylee Gonzalez's father trying to find out why the killer went after these students.
There's still more to be gathered. I think it was a restaurant or a coffee shop or something like that that put this predator on their path.
You can see there right behind me those sliding glass doors. Authorities say that's how they believe the suspect left the home. They also say that they can use cell phone data to place Brian Coburger back here near the home 5 hours after the murders, around 9:20 in the morning. It was also nearly 3.
If you look up on the road, up on the hill, you see a white pickup car driving. It does look like the one that was in front of the corner club, the one that was driving past Kaylee, Maddie, and Jack S. when they were talking about what was said to Adam. And I saw the same white pickup in front of Jack D's house. I heard he sold it a week later, allegedly. That was the rumor and speculations that was going on in the beginning. There's just speculations, trigger warning. But just watch that pickup car.
Out the sliding glass door. Up until the release of this affidavit, police had not revealed one of the two roommates who survived was actually awake and affidavit. Police had not revealed one of the two roommates who survived was actually awake and witnessed the intruder.
That hearing can be held outside the 14-day period.
Yes.
Joining us to discuss what happened in that Latah County courtroom today is Jason Labar. He's the Chief Public Defender for Monroe County, Pennsylvania, and actually represented Brian Coburger for a very short time during his extradition hearing in Pennsylvania. Jason, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Your thoughts on what happened today. Ann Taylor, the attorney representing Brian Coburger, asking for this 6-month delay in the preliminary hearing.
I found it quite unusual. That would be something that would never happen here in Pennsylvania, given the time constraints of hearings. However, I'm sure Attorney Taylor had good reason to ask for the delay.
Do you have any idea what her reasons could be? I can't think of what they would be, but obviously, you know, there's still investigation going on. We know the white Hyundai Elantra was seized from the home there in Pennsylvania, so they're probably searching that. We're talking test results, terabytes of information, social media accounts, phone records, you name it, they are probably going to get it. And will they get that, do you think, before the prelim?
It seems like in the 5 months before the preliminary hearing, some of this discovery will be accessible. I know Attorney Taylor said that it was being continued for the discovery purpose. Obviously, the DNA can probably be back if there's any matches with unidentified blood DNA at the scene. But I don't know what it was actually continued for, but I have speculation. We bantered around the idea that perhaps it's to receive the search warrants. Those search warrants in Pennsylvania as well as Washington, although you could file a motion to receive those, by operation of law become available after 60 days. They become unsealed and are available. So that's a potential reason for the delay, as well as, like you said, terabytes of information from the cell phones from not only Brian's phone, but the 4 victims' phones could potentially be available and gone through by the time it rolls around for the preliminary hearing.
And wouldn't she be entitled, though, as his defense attorney, even if those items are under seal, the search warrants and the affidavits, wouldn't she be entitled to those even if they were still sealed?
I actually don't know the answer to that because it is Pennsylvania search warrants as well as Washington search warrants. Certainly Idaho search warrants that were executed, she should be eligible to retain those before the preliminary hearing. I'm assuming that she'd also have those prior to the preliminary hearing from Pennsylvania and Washington, but I really don't know the answer to that, unfortunately.
I want you to discuss with me the probable cause affidavit. You've read it like everyone else, the 19 pages. It discusses DNA evidence, cell phone pings, some type of Vans shoe print. We don't know if Brian Coburger owns a pair of Vans sneakers, but they found a shoe print consistent with that there. The eyewitness identification. Your thoughts?
You clearly see a pair of Vans. A Van's footprint was found in front of DM's room. Just one footprint. Look at how short the shirt is that the guy on the right is wearing.
Evidence, cell phone pings, some type of Vans shoe print. We don't know if Brian Coburger owns a pair of Vans sneakers, but they found a shoe print consistent with that there. The eyewitness identification. Your thoughts as a defense attorney representing, many people accused of murder on what that probable cause affidavit alleged.
I had an opportunity to obviously go through the affidavit of probable cause several times now. I looked it over carefully. It's a strong circumstantial case, but the evidence, when it's viewed individually, you can attack that evidence as a defense attorney. Now, again, we're just in the infancy of the case, so much of this evidence is actually going to come after the preliminary hearing time, although we don't know now with this 5-month delay what's going to be available. But if you take the DNA evidence that's recovered from the sheath, for instance, I believe that to potentially be touch DNA, transfer DNA, which would mean that it could remain on that sheath for an indefinite period of time if undisturbed. That's one way of attacking that type of evidence that doesn't put him at the scene of the crime the night of, just that he merely touched that sheath at some point in time. The ID by DM is obviously going to be contested at the time of the preliminary hearing. I don't believe hearsay is admissible in Idaho under the rules, so it would be likely that DM is going to testify at the preliminary hearing when it gets to that point. So cross-examination of her is going to be key in the case to possibly get even more holes as far as the identification is concerned.
So let me ask you,
times now, I looked it over carefully. It's a strong circumstantial case, but the evidence, when it's viewed individually, you can attack that evidence as a defense attorney. Now, again, we're just in the infancy of the case, so much of this evidence is actually going to come after the preliminary hearing time, although we don't know now with this 5-month delay what's going to be available. But if you take the DNA evidence that's recovered from the sheath, for instance, I believe that to potentially be touch DNA, transfer DNA, which would mean that it could remain on that sheath for an indefinite period of time if undisturbed. That's one way of attacking that type of evidence that doesn't put him at the scene of the crime the night of, just that he merely touched that sheath at some point in time. The ID by DM is obviously going to be contested at the time of the preliminary hearing. I don't believe hearsay is admissible in Idaho under the rules, so it would be likely that DM is going to testify at the preliminary hearing when it gets to that point. So cross-examination of her is going to be key in the case to possibly get even more holes as far as the identification is concerned.
So let me ask you, you think it's a strong...
This is Labar, Jason Labar, I believe. He was Brian Christopher Coburger's defense attorney in Pennsylvania. Temporary, it was just until Brian was taken back to Idaho, Moscow. And he believes that they can attack the evidence, which I do believe too. And he's a criminal defense attorney who has worked many years and is very experienced. So he believes that it is touch DNA, which we know it is. If Brian did this horrific quadruple murders, I believe there would have been more blood. There would have been more signs. There would have been more evidence. We heard the reporter from Fox News who said there was blood on the walls. So something would have come up.
Words on paper, that's all we have to go on.
Right, and there's no direct evidence linking him other than that transferred DNA on the sheath. The idea, as I stated already, isn't complete 100%, oh, it's Brian Coburger. The white Elantra can't be determined to be his white Elantra. I mean, there's circumstantial evidence indicating that it could potentially be his white Elantra, but there's certainly not direct evidence. They don't have direct evidence that he's driving the white Elantra. They're using cell phone pings, which we all know as defense attorneys aren't GPS location coordinates. If it was GPS location coordinates, you're talking down to a meter as to where Brian Coburger was at the time of these crimes, whereas a cell phone tower ping is that you're within a radius of that tower up to 20 miles. And obviously, Mr. Coburger lived within 10 miles of the University of Idaho where these crimes were committed. So certainly he could ping at any moment in time near the actual crime.
Jason, you were his attorney maybe for 4 or 5 days, something like that. How do you keep in contact with his public defender out there in Idaho? Or are you just kind of done and observing this?
I'm merely done and observing and really viewing everything objectively because I was really working in the dark and blind when I represented Brian. The affidavit of probable cause wasn't even available to me, so I couldn't even discuss the affidavit, even if I wanted to, with him, because really I didn't want to because I didn't want to reveal anything about the case that would be specific to the facts and circumstances with him.
He's a smart guy, obviously, PhD student, 28 years old. He seems very attuned to what's going on. Yes, he understands his rights. We would expect that he would. How involved was he in, the aspects of what the extradition hearing was going to be? Obviously, we know that was a formality, but how interested was he in, being a part of what was going on? Or was he letting you take the reins? I know that, he was involved somewhat, is that right? And talking about that statement that you put out where he said he wanted to be exonerated?
Yeah, I was able to talk to Brian over the course of the 5 days for approximately 4 hours total. He was engaged with the conversations. He was aware of what plans I had, and he was good with everything that I laid out for him, including the statement. The statement of him being exonerated implicitly meant that he was innocent of the crimes. He used the word exonerated. That's why we put that in the statement. He wanted me to reach out to family, stay in contact with family, which I did to keep them abreast of the situation. Really, he was just aware and willing to cooperate with me. I didn't have too many issues speaking with him, if any at all. He was obviously, as you said, intelligent PhD student. It's much easier to talk to him than many of my clients that I have. It was a nice change of pace for me.
And your interactions with the parents, his family, what can you tell us about that?
I mean, his family's distraught. They're shocked by the arrest. They are in constant contact with him still. I believe they're talking daily on the phone, really just making sure that everything's going okay with both sides. Because I know Marianne, his mother, was very upset and was having trouble coping with the news. But really, the family's just taking it day by day, keeping things private, hoping, for really that Brian's doing okay.
And I can imagine any parent would be distraught about this. Do you expect to have any contact with him whatsoever, just as somebody who worked with him?
I don't expect to speak to Brian in the near future, certainly.
Well, any final thoughts, Jason?
No, I don't have anything else. I just appreciate your time. I know I've been stressing since my representation of Brian that he's entitled to a fair trial. And really, that's why I'm trying to be a voice for him so people don't jump to conclusions and raise these biases, so that he can actually have a fair trial with the presumption of innocence obviously being at the forefront here, really just getting that fair trial.
Well, Jason LaBar, Chief Public Defender from Monroe County, Pennsylvania, thanks for coming on. And
no, I don't have anything else. I just appreciate your time. I know I've been stressing since my representation of Brian that he's entitled to a fair trial. And really, that's why I'm trying to be a voice for him so people don't jump to conclusions and raise these biases, so that he can actually have a fair trial with the presumption of innocence obviously being at the forefront here, really just getting that fair trial.
I do agree with Jason LaBar, the criminal defense attorney in Pennsylvania, who was Brian Christopher Coburger's attorney for 5 days. He is right. Brian Christopher Coburger deserves a fair trial with all the nonsense and with everything I've seen in the grub truck video, in the Banfield video, the car lights flashing from Kings Road at 3 a.m. The timeline was 3 to 4. All of a sudden it turns to 4 a.m. to 4:25. I haven't seen a dash cam driver or delivery driver coming to the property. We were just told we saw lights around 4:05 or 4 a.m. and they told us that is Brian Christopher Coburger. There's no proof that it was Brian. We haven't seen any proof of Brian going inside the house or coming outside the house. There's no motive. There's no connection between Brian and these girls. Many people made even fake profiles when Brian was arrested. I wonder if Dylan will testify in the courts. And I wonder if Bethany is going to give up the exculpatory evidence she has. DM and BF was busy texting each other when the unlivings was happening. But I still don't believe that. I believe they were texting each other, but that was around 4 to 4:20. After the unlivings happened. I believe it was always two separate attacks. The couple was attacked by the Sigma Chi Boys and other fraternities and sororities, the Greek lifestyle. But I really believe that Maddie and Kaylee was attacked by someone else. They were attacked after Maddie made the last call to Jagdi, unless somebody else made the calls from Maddie and Kaylee's home. But you can hear a female yelling, "Stop it, stop!" And I believe it's either Kaylee or Maddie. Who could be so evil and cruel and hateful to unalive 4 people? If it's Brian Christopher Coburger, then he must have some serious mental illness. Or he must be definitely a psychopath or narcissistic. A person who tries to manipulate people must have been obsessing one of the victims. Allegedly, that's if it's Brian. But the evidence points out to many other people than Brian. I don't know what Brian was doing driving up there, but I really don't believe Brian was the one who went inside the house and unalived these 4 innocent people. And I believe someone in the inside, one of the girls, were working with the suspects. Why would Brian Christopher Coburger see DM or pass by her, and why would DM open her door thrice? Why didn't these 2 girls call 911? It took them 8 hours, but if you think of the timeline for the first 49 days, it was 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. that they were unalived. So that is 9 hours they didn't call the police. But if you go by the new timeline of the affidavit, it makes it 8 hours. Between 8 to 9 hours, these 2 girls decided not to call the police. They called and they summoned up friends. Can you believe that? People were going upstairs. They found Kaylee and Maddie unalived upstairs. Hunter was acting as a doctor, talking to the 911, taking pulse of 4 victims who are already deceased. That is easy to see. The medical reporter and the coroner said that it was a bloody scene. So I don't understand how they could be talking about an unconscious person. It doesn't make sense at all. Was someone jealous and hateful towards Maddie or Kaylee? Could this be about revenge towards Maddie? Was Maddie the target because of Hannah Clear, the girl who overdosed, and her body was found 3 days later, allegedly? Because there was rumors about that. And the quadruple murders happened on the 13th. It was Hannah's birthday on the 14th or 15th. So it was like, it sounded like revenge. Or was it crime of passion like the mayor said? And what happened to this beautiful couple? What happened in the fraternity, in the Sigma Chi party? We've heard that there was a fight there. I think the alcohol offense body cam with the undercover, I believe somebody called the police on the boys just to distract the police. Xana and Eaton, this timeline makes absolute no sense. Between 8 to 9, they were at the Sigma Chi fraternity party, but from 9 to 1:45 actually, nobody knows where they were. The sub police were investigating it. Nobody's taking any pictures with them. There's no social media pictures. The last picture they took was Eaton took the picture with these 2 triplets. when they were going to the something Betty ball. So what happened that night? What was the timeline of these two people, these two young people? We've heard that Ethan was found on the floor. When you enter the room on the hallway, Xana was found on the floor. Were the bodies moved to the bed? The roommates, surviving roommates called or summoned friends up. I can't get over that. There were so many people, the sororities and the fraternities, who knew about the murders before the police, before 9 a.m. Some knew about it at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m. So what really was happening?
Enforced entry.
Right.
Do you think that this was somebody that was known to them?
I think that that's kind of an impossible question. I think it's a very popular house.
As a mother, I feel like they know. I do. I've always felt that way. Nobody has told me that anyway.
Just
I just feel it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a college town. It's a small town. I feel the girls knew this person.
But we don't know that.
Oh, yeah.
We absolutely don't know that. I just feel it in my heart that they knew the person, and I've always felt that way. I don't know why, but I've always said they knew him. Yeah. I just don't feel like this was like some rando just driving through Moscow.
They keep saying no sign of forced entry.
Right.
Do you think that this was somebody that was known to them?
I think that that's kind of an impossible question. I think it's a very popular house.
As a mother, I feel like they know. I do. I've always felt that way. Nobody has told me that anyway. I just feel it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a college town. It's a small town. I feel the girls knew this person.
But we don't know that.
Oh, yeah.
We absolutely don't know that. I just feel it in my heart that they knew the person, and I've always felt that way. I don't know why, but I've always said they knew him. Yeah. I just don't feel like this was like some rando just driving through Moscow.
I agree with Chrissy Congavs. It is someone the victims knew. That's the reason I believe the 4chan post. There are some evil people that are plotting against the 4 victims. And like Chrissy said, I don't believe it was a random person. That's why I don't believe it was Brian Christopher Coburger. He has no motive. He has no connections. For whatever reason he was there, could be totally different. He could have been there to party. Brian Christopher Coburger could have been there because he was friends with one of the surviving roommates or with the victims themselves. The touch DNA on the knife sheet isn't enough evidence. That's touch DNA. So was this a crime of passion, like the mayor said? Could it have been an ex-boyfriend who was upset that Kaylee was leaving to Austin? Why was Kaylee so upset? Why was Kaylee so upset when she was asking Maddie, what did you tell Adam? And Maddie said, I told Adam everything. Jack S. was walking with them from the corner club to the grub truck. Why was Kaylee so upset? Dylan was supposed to be with a boyfriend. People saw her with a boyfriend in front of Kings Road, allegedly. She's seen wearing a mask, a pink mask. And there's many pictures she deleted and many pictures she put on private. What did Bethany actually see that is exculpatory evidence in this case? Brian Christopher Coburger said that Bethany Funk could exonerate him. It's something to do with BF and DM. They know everything in this case. But where's the empathy? Why don't they care? DM is busy partying. She's supposed to be going through survivor's guilt. She used the mental health term saying that she froze. She's in a frozen mode. I do understand life goes on and she has to move on. But she could have been discreet with her partying. BF allegedly got engaged. Adam moved to Austin. That's where Kaylee was supposed to move. May she rest in peace. I don't think Xana ordered any Jack in the Box. I think that was a previous order that we saw in the kitchen. We didn't see any delivery driver coming and delivering any food. It was only one vehicle that was either white or light color. I heard that's what the owner, the woman who owns Linda Lane, said in the beginning, and I showed you all that it was, I think, on New York Post, or one of them, that she said she gave the evidence to the police. The car that she saw was cream color. She said it was a light color. She did not say it was a white color. So even the car is not right. The car that the police should be searching for is actually the 2011 to 2013 white Elantra. It's not Brian Christopher Coburger's car. And the timeline doesn't add up with Brian Christopher Coburger. If you go to the timeline in the first 49 days, 49 days is a long time to have one timeline that these victims were unalived between 3 to 4 a.m. The coroner said that she pronounced the deaths. The deaths were after 2 a.m. I know it can be any time after 2 a.m., but they go closest to what time. If it was 1, she would have said after 1 a.m., but she said after 2 a.m., not after 3 a.m. and not after 4 a.m. So she means somewhere between 2 till 3 a.m. These students were brutally killed. I believe it's someone, even the sorority girls could be involved. It could be someone who has hate, enviousness, jealousy, anger, and wanted to take revenge. Or it could be a crime of passion that went totally wrong. Or it could be some bored group who decided to explore their fantasies of death and evilness, like the 4chan said, allegedly. Why wasn't the other 2 surviving roommates and the dog Murphy hurt or harmed? That's the reason sometimes I believe that Jack D is involved and it could be a crime of passion. Did Jack D call himself from Maddie and Kaylee's phone, allegedly? He was at the corner club at 1:35 a.m. and the girls were calling him from 2:24 a.m. to 2:52 a.m. So it was barely an hour. He couldn't have fallen asleep.
Gonsalves was quick, meaning that she didn't slowly bleed to death after being stabbed multiple times. And this is new information that we are learning from her dad, Steve Gonsalves. Kaylee's father has been releasing more and more information about these brutal Idaho college murders. You'll remember that he was the one who actually alerted the public to the fact that Kaylee's wounds were significantly more brutal than the other 3 victims in the house. Police have been very careful about what details they are giving the public, and they're not even telling the families of the victims many of the details about the crime scene. However, the information about Kaylee's specific body and her injuries have been given to Steve, he says, from the coroner. So what we're learning now is more about the extent of Kaylee's brutal stab wounds. And Steve says that he was told by the coroner that Kaylee's lungs and liver were both punctured in the stabbing. He added that the coroner described these injuries as less like a stab and more like a tear, calling them big open gouges, which indicated to the medical examiner that Kaylee bled out very quickly. Steve says it was the coroner who also alerted him to the fact that Kaylee's wounds were significantly more severe than her best friend Maddie, who died in the bed right next to her. The state of the victims' bodies can tell investigators a lot of different things. In this case, in Kaylee's instance, the severity of her wounds could indicate to investigators that she was perhaps the intended target or she was the first person murdered.
Where was Jack that night? I personally don't believe he was sleeping. The girls started calling him at 2:26, and he was at the corner club at 1:35. We saw a white pickup car driving there, and I've seen a white pickup car in front of his house and a Hyundai. Where was Jack? How come Murphy wasn't harmed? Bethany Funk's bedroom was on the first floor. Bethany Funk was present at the home 8 hours later when police were called, arrived on scene and discovered the homicides. Are they trying to say that Bethany Funk was not present while the unlivings was happening, but she was present 8 hours later when the police were called? Or are they trying to say that she was there the whole time? Just because Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen were texting each other, it doesn't mean that they were in the same house. This is very interesting. No wonder BK and his defense attorney and the team want Bethany Funk to testify. Bethany was at the Sigma Chi fraternity party, so she must have seen the fight. She's the only one, or one of the few, who would know what happened to Zan and Ethan. BK said that she has exculpatory evidence that can exonerate him. Did she see something from a window? Or did she see someone while she was going to the kitchen maybe? or going upstairs? Because we saw the forensic team taking pictures of the steps going from the second floor down to the first floor to Bethany's room. What does Bethany know? At least Bethany is not partying like Dylan. Bethany Funk was at home, allegedly, and so was Dylan. So why didn't they... how could they have seen Eaton, Zana, Kaylee and Maddie coming home? Because allegedly they went to sleep, was what we were told. And Dylan got up and said, "Stop making noise, I'm trying to sleep." This doesn't make sense. Dylan was supposed to be sleeping in the first floor, and now she actually saw a man with bushy eyebrows. Doesn't make sense. Justice for the victims. May they rest in peace, and condolence to their families.